Welcome to this lesson. I'm going to be picking up where Miss Rogerson left off. She should have taught you about the exciting world of the police of Athens and Sparta. And I'll be picking up after that introduction with Greek colonization. So, first, we need to remember our historical thinking skills, and one of those skills is identifying patterns of change and continuity, and of cause and effect, and also looking for similarities and differences. Those are the main skills we work on, as well as contextualization. So all of those things, you want to bear them in mind as we look and study the Greeks. First thing is to learn about Greek colonization. To help you with any misunderstanding, I want to clarify that the Greeks were not one single people. It's not like it is today where it's just one country called Greece. Instead, as Ms. Rogerson taught you, there were many different kinds of Greek city-states, or polis, plural for polis. And although they shared a common language and a common culture, common beliefs, they did not share the same political state. And so there's not a centralized state here the way that we saw, say, in other parts of the world, like in Persia. One thing that's going to happen is, because Greek is a rocky terrain and there's not that much land for farming, population pressure, which means there's a lot of people and not enough space, not enough arable land to farm, is going to cause them to colonize or go seek out new lands where they can find arable land to farm. And they're going to be looking in other parts of the Mediterranean. Especially popular are Sicily and southern Italy. So coastal Mediterranean, areas of the Black Sea. In Sicily, you have the city that is now called Naples. It comes from the word Neapolis, which means new city. Same in France, Massilia, Marseille. Anatolia is modern-day Turkey, and then you have southern Ukraine. You want to keep in mind that this was happening between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE, so that's the 700s to the 500s BCE. There were over 400 colonies that developed, and each of them were separate. So they shared Greek culture, but they were ruled independently. And eventually, this is going to bring them into conflict with other societies like the Persians. It's going to increase trade between these Greek city-states, which continue to trade with each other, and new states. And it's also going to diffuse Greek culture and even stimulate political development, the rise of small states, as wealth generates the desire to build states in some of these quieter areas. It's also going to give the Greeks access to agricultural and natural resources they didn't have before. I want you to remember that this is an ad hoc response, which means it was done as was needed. It wasn't organized by a central government, which is a difference between the Greeks and other civilizations that we've studied. So, okay, here we're looking at the Mediterranean Sea. In red are different colonies that were established. Remember, there were over 400 colonies. And remember, this is the Black Sea. Here, you're taking a look at this area is called Ionia. It's really important that you know that. It's in Anatolia, because the historical context of the time is the Persians are ruling this entire area. And that's going to bring them in conflict with more and more with the Greeks that are living here. And there's also going to be this diffusion of Greek culture. So remember where Ionia is. Remember Anatolia, and of course, here's what we think of as Greece today, but that wasn't just one country. It was a bunch of little city-states back then. I've already mentioned this. This is going to stimulate trade between the Greeks and the different regions, and also spread new ideas, new language, new culture. And again, it has the political effect of stimulating the wealth, stimulating the development of new political systems, spreading Greek culture. And this brings us to the most exciting part of today's lecture. I'd like to move this out of the way so that I can really show you a little bit more, about the Persian Wars, which is one of my favorite topics to teach about. Okay, so I'll be kind of in the way. Let me see if I can find myself out of the way here. That's good enough, I guess. Maybe here. Sorry, kids. All right, good enough. So the Persian Wars between 500 and 479 BCE, you learned about the Persians. Remember Aunt Sally Parks Sassy for my classes. For Ms. Rogerson's classes, that was an acronym we used to remember Aunt for the Achaemenids, Sally for the Seleucid, P for the Parthians, Parks, and then Sassy is the Sassanids. And of course, between the Achaemenids and the other three, there's Alexander of Macedon, which Ms. Rogerson is going to talk about how it affects here as well. But for now, the Persians means the Achaemenids, okay? So the Achaemenids were expanding at this time in history. And of course, the Greeks were also expanding. And there's going to be a revolt between the Greeks living in Ionia. Oh no, the Greeks living in Ionia and the Greeks and the Persians, who are trying to control Anatolia more strongly by forcing those Ionian Greeks to pay greater levels of taxes. Now, there are also Athenian Greeks that live in Athens. So just to remind you, if I can go backwards, okay, here we're looking, there's like Sparta, there's Athens, here's Ionia. So these are different kinds of Greeks, but they feel connected because they're similar. Okay, so the Ionian Greeks are upset with the increasing control of the Persians. The Athenian Greeks decide to support them by sending a fleet of ships. This upsets Darius, who puts down that rebellion in 493 BCE and then decides to punish the Athenians by attacking them. And the Persians, which should have won, are routed or defeated in 490 when they try to attack the Athenians. The Battle of Marathon. You can read about that in your book. 10 years later, the successor of Darius, by the way, Darius and Xerxes are names you should remember from chapter 7. The successor of Darius, Xerxes, is going to also attack Athens and try to burn Athens. He's also driven out in 480 BCE, and you can read about the different battles in your books. The long-term effect will be that the Persians and the Greeks continue to fight. They have these intermittent, that means every once in a while, skirmishes between the Persians and the Greeks, which are ultimately going to weaken both. Now, the Persians don't want to, fully deal with the Greek problem, which is removed, but they also don't want to, so they don't quite resolve that issue, and the Greeks, for their part, mostly just want to be left alone. Okay, so there's a really great crash course video that I would recommend. It's called The Persians and the Greeks. The intro is sarcastic. I was going to show it to you on my slide, but here it is. You can go ahead and watch this one. It makes some jokes about this Sparta. Okay, so back to this. Make this big. Okay, so here I just wanted to show you, here's Ionia, and this is the proximity to the rest of the Greeks. Okay, so now the Greeks and the Persians are continuing to fight. The Greeks, remember, are not united politically. They feel a lot of cultural similarities, but they're also different in many ways. The Polis, though, are worried about having to, have conflict with the Persians in the future. And so they decide to create an alliance between the Greek city-states called the Delian League. And that is to forestall or prevent in the future any future attacks by the Persians. So by strengthening together, by working together, they can pool their resources, create a stronger military, and be able to defend themselves. There are lots of different polis that could have taken the lead in this alliance. Ms. Rogerson taught you about Athens and about Sparta. Well, initially, Athens is going to take the lead, and that's because of their superior fleet. So all of the other polis or city-states are going to make payments to Athens, ostensibly for the reason of providing financial support for their military, so that they have a strong military, and that military is not just going to protect Athens, but all of the Greek city-states that are part of the Delian League. Instead, Athens used that financial contribution to really expand, especially under the ruler Pericles. They funded their bureaucracy, they funded construction projects, and that made the other city-states jealous, created resentment, and that tension is going to eventually lead to civil conflict called the Peloponnesian War. Now, the Peloponnesus is the southern part of Greece, as you know. So this is a civil war between 431 and 404 BCE, and it basically divided the Greek world into two hostile camps, one led by Athens and the other one led by Sparta. Eventually, Athens is forced to surrender in 404 BCE, but that's not the end of the conflict. The conflict continues between Sparta and the other polis, eventually leads to more conflicts, and hegemony or full control of the Greek world is then going to be passed between one city-state and another. The long-term effect of this is it's going to make it very hard for the Greek city-states to work together. These internal struggles, because it creates a lack of unity and an inability to unite, say, in case there's a potential attack from outside, say the north, say Macedon. Let Ms. Rogerson teach you about that, and Philip, and then his son Alexander. But basically, it's going to make it very difficult for them to create the sort of unity they need to protect themselves from outside attack. And we'll leave you on that cliffhanger. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you are all doing well.